So here's the puzzle. How do you make a luxury SUV with a V6 sound more AMG than the AMG that actually came with it without falling into the same trap every muffler shop straight pipe special? This 2019 Mercedes GLE 400 is basically the younger sibling of the GLE 43 AMG, the one that split the Mercedes community into two camps. On one side, the badge believers who said the 43 was a real AMG because it had Ultrabach tuning, and the others were the skeptics who swore this was just a rebadged V6 with a marketing degree. Meanwhile, every muffler shop within a 50-mile radius convinced half of them that hacking off resonators and welding in whatever scrap pipe was in stock is the pinnacle of performance. Loud equals fast, right? If you've seen our earlier videos about Mercedes muffler deletes and why they're usually a terrible idea, you already know how passionate this debate gets. If not, go check it out, because the comment section is basically a study in psychology. Some people love the refinement and tone, and others love, let's call it, high-pitched gravel in a blender. And guess what? We're gonna play both so you can hear exactly what I mean. But here's where it gets fun. Today we're building a custom exhaust that has to do three things at once. Sound more aggressive than the factory AMG 43, which this isn't, still sound like something AMG would have made, and most importantly, set this GLE 400 up for future mods as the owner chases his sport SUV dreams. And to do that, we're breaking one of my 7 rules for exhaust design, but with a twist. Yeah, it's a rear X pipe, but don't panic. I'll explain why it works this time. So stick around, because by the end of the video, you'll know exactly what separates louder from better, and maybe even rethink what a V6 SUV can sound like. And if you don't, at least the comment section will be entertaining. Speaking of, hit subscribe now so you can add your 2 cents when the muffler delete Manschaft shows up. So starting this light build on the W166, and we've got to get some bass lines, which means I've got to drive it and listen for anything in the exhaust that I think can be improved or needs to stay the same. We've got to dyno it and see where it's at. We've got to just make sure the car is mechanically safe. Now, we've got the dynos out of the way, and anytime that we're running it, we've got to run it a few times just to make sure the numbers peak out, and the difference between cold and warm is about 20 horsepower. 254, which is where a 330 horsepower car should sit. Now, AMG did do a performance version in the GLE 43, and that car makes, on paper, 366 horsepower, another 30 horsepower, which, as far as I can tell, is done through boost and possibly a slight compression decrease. I don't really see any mechanical differences in the cars. The turbos look the same, the intake manifolds look the same. The exhaust, though, from the catalytic converter back is different. So that's probably what this customer is after, a little bit more of an AMG flair, trying to get maybe something like a Porsche Cayenne GTS, something along those lines. Man, that thing is quiet, like an appliance. Definitely not an AMG version. So we've definitely got some room to improve. I know we can add some horsepower on the M276, and an engine that I've always kind of liked the higher end note of the engine, but it is a V6 and they have been notoriously tough for us. But let's get this thing off of the dyno and take a look at the exhaust and see what we're gonna plan up. So this is the exhaust on the GLE 400, and it is a bit different than the GLE 43, at least according to the pictures I've referenced and the catalog. Now, what I noticed right away is that this is kind of a gross chambered muffler, and it acts as a resonator in this case, and really there isn't much sound control other than the rear muffler and this pipe. Fairly free flowing, so I don't think there's much power to be had at this one, at least as far as stock power levels go. But because you have two pipes essentially dumping off into an open area, you run into issues, even though it's controlling sound, where once you start inducing more boost, more power through the same muffler, you end up with a little bit of area where the expansion can hinder flow and slow things down. Typically resonators, at least straight through ones, won't affect power very much until you start adding power, and it's super easy with an ECU tune and boost. You just crank it up, and that's where you can get power gains from replacing resonators, but I don't expect much in this system. However, the GLE does make more boost with the 43 AMG model. The mufflers are different, about 30 more horsepower, so I bet there's a tiny bit in there, as well as sound, you know, maybe 5 horsepower. We'll see when all's said and done. This exhaust is really all over the place. This is crazy. This is 2.6 coming in here, 2.5 coming through here. Once we get out, we've got 3.5 here. Then we got this Y, which that's actually a decent looking Y as far as flow goes. But then it necks down to 2.25 on one side. And yes, this is ovaled a little bit, but 2.5, I mean, this thing is really kind of all over the place all the way back, which goes to show that a lot of times exhaust flow is an afterthought based on sound control and spacing constraints. But a bigger factor is the cost that goes into it. They're trying to aggregate that and get you something that does the job for the best profit margin. And that's usually why you see exhausts that aren't done well, which leaves us room for improvement. This thing is super quiet. This thing does a good job in conjunction with those turbos, but we're gonna turn it up a little bit. And the secret back here is going to be doing something that we had a little bit of success on with the V12 BMW. I'll let Cody talk more about that, but I think we're gonna try it again in a little bit different of a configuration. However, what I don't plan on doing, and because I've had a lot of trouble with V6s, is I might leave the megaphones out of this build, only because of what we're doing back here. I'm worried a megaphone up front with its volume inside of that megaphone could induce some sort of funky characteristics of the V6, the raspiness that we might not be able to dial back before we start doing what we're doing up here. So we've got a lot to do. Cody's gonna go over the plan, but this thing leaves us a fair bit of room for improvement. All right, Cody, you probably know me well enough by now, and I've got some things, we talked a little bit about this, but what do you think that we're gonna do with this exhaust?
Well, for starters, being a V6, I know we're gonna go 2-into-1.
All right, you got that.
Ideally, we're gonna put a megaphone in there somewhere, and then we're gonna Y pipe out and go towards the back.
You've got it mostly, and you know, I'm gonna take a little inspiration from your suggestion on that V12. In actuality, I want to try something a little bit different. So you remember when you did the crossover X pipe? And I always don't like using X pipes in the rear. But on the quiet mode, it actually sounded a little more exotic, although it wasn't quite loud enough, right?
Right.
I want to try that on this, but instead of it being the quiet, I want to go that X pipe being the loud side.
Oh, okay.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense, yeah.
So we got to fit all that back there, but my only thoughts are, because we're using the X pipe back there, I worry that there's just gonna be too much going on, that we couldn't do something. The main reason I don't like using X pipes in the rear is because the further you get that back, the less pipe distance there is to further tone down some of the noise that you're gonna get from the turbulence of the X itself. When you use it far up in the system, and then you've got the pipe and the muffling behind it, you pick up the good characteristics and then dial out the back by the time you get to the back. But when it's right in the back and you got it coming straight back out, usually they sound pretty gross. But I think because we had the mufflers and all that piping, because it was going out to two sides, it actually ended up sounding pretty good.
Yeah.
So the gamble here though is that because we're not gonna be putting resonators on that side, you know what I mean? Like, could it end up sounding weird, and I think the megaphone would just add to that. So I'm gonna say no megaphones this time. Let's just get to the resonator, the 2-into-1, and get back to that contraption back there.
So instead of a megaphone here, should we just put like an oversized resonator?
Yeah, like we're gonna need some sort of sound muffling, although this thing still has the factory cats. It shouldn't be too loud.
Right.
But I think a big resonator, I don't know what's gonna fit under there, probably what?
Maybe 3.5?
3.5, super quiet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Do something like that.
So let's see what you come up with. You know what we're trying to do. All you gotta do is make it out of metal now.
Right.
All right, you guys are probably looking around wondering, why is it so dark in the shop right now? And I've actually have somebody who has been watching the channel, they reached out to me, and this is Steve Gentili. And why don't you tell them what you do, Steve?
So yes, I own a company called Lighting Manufacturers. I've been involved in for over 50 years now. We're installing our LED high bay, and I like to call this, we're gonna take you out of the fluorescent era and move you into the LED era.
Yeah, I think you had me when you told me not only did you watch the channel, but that the shop light could be improved. And then you told me that you're a racer and you were doing things from racing in lighting. I was sold. So
exactly.
I'm super excited, you know, just getting the improvement of better lighting. But I think you said you're going to be saving me a few bucks as well.
You're probably going to be saving at minimum $300 to $400 a month on electricity based on the energy these old lights used and what the LED technology is. You're going to be saving quite a bit on energy. And then as far as long-term maintenance, no more changing tubes. These things are going to go for at least probably 8 to 10 years without any maintenance.
If you guys are looking for lighting, please reach out. We'll throw a link in the comments, but get a hold of Steve. He'll take care of you and get your place looking much brighter. But thanks for doing this, man. Thanks for taking the chance and reaching out. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, so this part's gonna be a little bit interesting building that Y pipe, because this side comes out nice and straight, and this side comes out downward at an angle. So building a Y pipe is gonna be a little bit difficult, and then we're gonna have to end up getting it straight out because we can't go left or right here. We're gonna have to go straight, follow the drive shaft, and then right in this area, we're gonna have to Y back out. So getting the Y pipe to line up with this drive shaft is gonna be a little bit interesting. It's not gonna be perfectly symmetrical like I like building all my stuff. That's gonna be a little bit fun to figure out, see what we can come up with. All right, so I got the Y pipe made up. I kind of got, you know, this section kind of mocked up for the most part. It seems like I made it a little bit too short, so all I really have to do is just kind of take out some length on this guy and just shorten this up, and it'll scoot everything over a little bit. So where I want to be is kind of more like there. That way I have room for the megaphone and the resonator if we're going to do that route. With this little mock-up, it kind of gives me an idea of where we're going to be. We're going to move forward from there. So we just got to take this guy down, shorten it up just like ½ an inch, and then put it back up there, and it should be good. So we got the Y pipe fitted up, and then we got the V-band in place and a little extra spot. That's gonna hold this resonator kind of perfectly in place. We're gonna have a 45 here, and we're gonna have another 45 here. Kind of jog it over just a little bit. It's gonna run parallel with the drive shaft. So from here, we should be able to get into our second Y pipe and then branch off going towards the back into our X pipe that's gonna go to valves and mufflers and tailpipes. Alrighty, so we got the resonator in place. We got this 3.5 inch into a 2.5 inch Y pipe in place, for the most part mocked up. Now we got this tube that's gonna bring us around the differential and to the back. So this guy's gonna get us right to the back, and that's gonna be our start to the muffler section. Once I get this tacked in place, I'll pull everything down and weld it, and then we should be able to move on to the next step.
All right, Cody, let's see what you got, what you came up with.
I got this double Y X pipe, and yeah, this was kind of fun to make.
There's definitely a lot going on there, but
Oh yeah.
you made something like this before. This one looks a little more intricate, but should get the job done. Although I am apprehensive, like I said, putting an X back here. The thing about it is that we are going to have all of this piping still to get back to the built-in tips into the bumper. And then we are going to have the resonated side also leading out. So the other nice thing is the size. It is very much smaller, but between the split and everything else, that will carry enough flow where there shouldn't be a restriction. But it also should control the sound much better because it is smaller. So if we had something bigger, I'd be worried about drone and resonance, but because it's that size and with all that piping, I don't think we'll hear that turbulence in the X pipe. So
Right.
I want to hear what this thing sounds like on it. Let's play around, let's get that up there. So fabrication is all wrapped up, and this is something to behold. Quite the setup back here. X pipe, Y pipes going into 2 valves, and it's resonated. This should control this V6 in a way that hopefully makes this thing sound pretty good, but we're gonna have to get it on the road and let you guys decide. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's always horsepower to be found in every performance exhaust. However, the numbers seem to show that we were able to get a little bit out of it. Is this something that you're even going to notice? Well, maybe not, but I bet in conjunction with the more sporty tone the car now has, you're going to definitely enjoy that there's more power. And I know that this thing will flow better when pushed because this actually shows it is flowing better. So when we do crank up the boost, this will support more power going through the rest of his mods. So I'm happy with that. The customer will be happy with that. But we still got to find out what this thing can make when things get turned up, but that'll be for another video. For now, that'll have to do. So what did we actually pull off here? The GLE 400 went from quiet, underwhelming V6 commuter to something that finally earns the sporty SUV reputation. We managed to clean up that rasp these engines are infamous for and get a deeper, smoother tone and still give it that bite that says, yes, this has been opened up. The big surprise? Even without a tune, we picked up a few ponies. Something we weren't expecting just out of an exhaust. And that rear-mounted X-pipe rule breaker, turns out with the right pipe length and diameter, it behaved exactly how we needed it to. Had we just slapped one in there like most people do, this story would have probably ended up with a lot more swearing. And that's the balance here. Loud enough to be worth doing, refined enough to not sound cheap, and built with the kind of planning that'll let the next round of mods, the intake and tune, slide right in. It's a rare case where you don't have to pick between AMG level tone and aftermarket aggression. Which brings us to the bigger picture. Sometimes the real win isn't just adding volume, it's creating sound that can grow with the build. At the end of the day, mod culture is always fighting that tug of war. Instant gratification versus long-term vision, and the quick and dirty muffler delete scratches an itch. But this kind of system, it's an investment that pays you back every time you start the car. So now I'm curious. If you were building a grown-up tuner SUV, would you go all in for refinement, or do you still think louder is always better? Drop it in the comments so we can all pretend not to judge each other's tastes. Stay loud, stay curious, and we'll hear you next time.